Hi, I'm Dan Shine, Senior Editor at Automotive News. I'm here at Vehicles for Change, just outside Baltimore, Maryland. Vehicles for Change is an organization that takes former inmates and other at-risk youth and train them to be service technicians, and then places them in dealerships around the area. And they also work on cars here that they donate to needy families. Let's go take a look at what they do. Mike, thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
No problem.
You graduate from this program in just a few days.
That Friday.
And what's the plan after that?
So my plan is, I got hired at NTB in Annapolis. So I start on the following Monday on the 18th.
Okay.
So things are looking good.
Yeah. How did you first hear about this program?
Honestly, I heard this through a friend. So I had a friend that I was close to. His cousin works here. And he works in the front desk. And they had told me about it and reached out. I gave them a call, like a little spoken word here, and they got me in and was able to join the class and participate.
Were you into cars before then?
I mean, honestly, no. So I grew up doing all different home improvement. I've never had nobody to show me cars, but the opportunity came up. I was always good with my hands. I wanted to learn, so I enrolled, and it's been great. I mean, I learned a lot fast.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about working on cars?
I mean, this is the hands-on, just being able to repair people's rides and make sure it's safe for them to get home and there ain't no complications.
And donating.
Oh yeah, the donations, actually helping families that don't have anything, like, or have going through troubled times. Like this is a great program for that because people can get donated, we fix them up and return them to, or give them to people that don't have the means to get to work and help their families out. So it's great, you know.
Was there a point in your life where you were thinking, something like what you're going to, you're a new job, steady work and all that was maybe going to be unattainable for you?
I mean, that's crossed my mind so much. So, like, finding a job, I got all these tattoos and stuff. So I was a tattoo artist for a long time. Okay. And I just wanted to change the scenery up. So, but trying to get into other jobs with tattoos is harder. But the mechanic area seems to be everywhere that I've interviewed. Like, it's easy to get in with it. Tattoos aren't a problem because you're mainly in the back working in the shop, working on cars. Right. As long as you know what you're doing, they just want you, if you're knowledgeable and easily to grasp new concepts and ideas and progress,
Yeah, perfect. Kingston, great to speak with you. You're also graduating in a few days.
Yes, sir.
What are your future plans?
My future plans, become a tech. I kind of want to step into diesel mechanics, but I feel like this was a great start for me. I've enjoyed my 12 weeks here. I've learned so much. I've learned so much.
And what do you like about working on cars, and what's the kind of appeals to you that you want to make this a career?
Ever since I was a kid, I love cars. I used to go with my dad to work on his truck and everything. So, just to take the step myself, it felt like a great thing to do. I didn't want to go to college. That wasn't my plan. So I feel like here was just a great alternative for me. I feel like I left with a lot of skills. I learned so much. It was a great community. So I loved it,
Well, how did you find out about this place?
My uncle actually had went here, and he was telling me, he had came from jail, came through the program. And he was telling me it's a great program. He learned a lot. And me being a younger guy, I didn't want to go to college. I learned a lot. He told me, you're doing this, you're learning this. They give you this. They provide a community. And I came here and I feel like I had the exact same experience. I have nothing negative to say. And
in addition to learning how to turn wrenches and things like that, do they also provide you other kind of life skills?
Yep. I came here, opened my first bank account. I made a lot of, met a lot of interesting people, like people from all different walks of life. So I feel like I built a strong sense of community. Like these guys, I'm not going to leave here and not talk to them. Right. These guys, we're all on the same path. We all learn the same thing. So, I've got to check in, make sure everyone's doing good, but a strong sense of community for sure.
Nice. I wish you great luck.
Thank you so much.
Janae, thanks for joining me. You are the program director here at Vehicles for Change.
I am.
Tell me what that role entails.
Everything. So from beginning to end, that's recruitment, getting the word out, going to different community events and organizations, resource fairs, high schools, prison facilities, wherever we can recruit individuals interested in becoming an automotive technician. Retention, once they're enrolled, keeping them here, keeping them engaged, making sure we have the best curriculum to offer them, making sure we have the best supportive services to offer them while enrolled. Then we go into employment placement. So making sure we connect them with employer partners who will continue to foster their growth into this industry. And then even after that, it involves keeping in touch, making sure that they've kept those jobs that they've secured, making sure that they still have access to supportive services even after they've left our shop.
When you meet a young person, what's the sales pitch to them? Why they should come to VFC?
The sales pitch is really, are you interested in working on cars? We have a lot of people who've always wanted to work on cars. It's been something that they've been interested in, something that they've dabbled with. It's a awesome career. It's a growing career. I think careers in the trades right now are really taking off, right? To be able to have a skill. Because not only can you work for an organization, you can work for yourself, right? We have a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs. And so why not have a trade where you can actually have your own business if you like? What's
the biggest hurdle, I guess, for you to overcome when you pitch that to a young person or maybe someone who's just out of prison, to get them to come? What is their resistance? What's kind of the number one argument that they kind of give you, or say, I'm not interested because? I think the number one argument would be for most training centers is, Ms. Janae, I need a job now. I need to go to work right now. My family needs me to bring in an income. So maybe I don't really have time to hone in on a craft or a skill. I need to just go to work. And my rebuttal to them is, okay, that's a job. Right? Can you grow in that job? Where will you be at 2, 3, 5 years later, in that job, if there's no room for growth for you? Whereas though this is a career. So sometimes we have to invest and make sacrifices to actually be able to grow. And yeah. So once you get them here, you got 12 weeks to keep them here. Weeks. What's the struggle there? What's reasons for people who want to drop out? I think it's going to be the same reason why some people don't want to start. It's, okay, I'm here, I'm learning, but I want to go out and, and grab a job really quick. But again, we just reinforce that a few more weeks, a little bit longer, you'll be able to really get a great foundation to start as an entry-level technician. And I think that would still beat out any quick, fast job at a local warehouse or things like that. It's like you can hold out just a little bit longer. So we do find support in quite a few of our individuals. They've been able to get part-time jobs in the evening. Now, especially since we've kind of changed our hours of operation to allow them to still go to work after they're done training here. And for you, what's the satisfaction that comes with this job? Satisfaction, so crazy. So we see graduates and they come back and they've been working for a few months. They just look different. They have a different glow about them. They have a different meaning for their life, right? They've dedicated their time. They've sacrificed some nights and some parties on some weekends to study and to really perfect their craft. So when they come back, they just glow. They're looking different. They're feeling different. They're lighter in their steps. The things that plagued them when they started here, you can tell it's just lifted. And that's I don't know, it feels good. It feels like I made an impact. Thanks so much. Thank you, Dan. Martin, like a lot of great businesses or nonprofits are sometimes born out of trying to solve a problem. And you had a car donation program, many years ago. But the reconditioning was taking too long because the shops that you would send these cars to didn't have enough service technicians to get them through. So you decided, I'm going to start training service technicians. Tell us how that process began.
Yeah, so back in the day, pre-COVID, there were a couple years where we did 400 cars a month or a year to families. Yeah. And one year we did 500. And we were using probably 7 or 8 shops to do the work. And all these shops started going, hey, we can't fix all these cars because we don't have enough mechanics, right? And one of them one day said, why don't you train technicians and we'll hire them and then we can fix your cars. And it was like, okay, the light bulb went on, right? It was like, hey, I like this idea. Yeah, okay. And that's how it came about, really. So the program is 12 weeks. 12 weeks. Walk us through what the students go through and what they learn and kind of the basics of their education. Yeah, so the majority of them come in with no background in automotive at all. Many of them come in with either coming right out of incarceration or a criminal background. They all come from, disadvantaged populations. Mm-hmm. So when they come in here, one of the first things our team does is sit down with them as an individual. How do we get you ready to be an employee, right? Because That's as important as the skill itself.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that we do. And then they do an evaluation of kind of what their skill level is. As far as some of them have had some automotive, some of them have worked on, their own cars. And so our goal is when they leave here is to be somewhere between a general maintenance and a C+ technician. So they go through ASE certifications. Most of them pass a minimum of 3 of the ASE entry-level exams. We've had guys finish with all 10. And I say guys, but more than 10% of our graduates have been women. And dealerships love to have our women graduates. They just love the fact that they're so much more detail-oriented. And so they go through that. They spend about 90 minutes every morning in the classroom on theory, and then they spend the rest of the day working on live vehicles. Okay. So it's been a great program. Here in our Halethorpe facility, we've graduated and placed 328 individuals in the last 10 years, and then we have 2 other facilities in Maryland that have graduated about 110 and placed about in the last 4 years.
So I think you told me 80% graduation rate, 80% placement rate.
80%, yes. So, and to be honest with you, the only reason we don't have 100% placement rate is some of the folks go through the graduation and they just decide they're not going to work for whatever reason. And some of them go to work and eventually go into manufacturing or we've had folks go into CDL driving and that type of thing because there's plenty of jobs out there. As you guys know, every dealership I talk to, every shop I talk to says, we need a technician. Or more.
So you get donated vehicles, students work on them to get them ready to donate to a needy family, but you also have like a regular independent garage here. So any citizens, residents in the neighborhood here can bring it in for oil change, brakes, that kind of stuff as well.
Absolutely. So as we grew the program, the one thing I'd seen over the years in nonprofits is if they rely on 1 or 2 sources of revenue, man, they struggle. And a lot of times they end up going out of business. So I wanted to have a multiple revenue sources. So our garage is open to the public. We have 3 of those. We have a used car business. Many of the cars that get donated, we have a wholesale business. So we sell the ones that we really can't repair within our budget. And then we have our virtual reality part of the organization where we're putting that in prisons and jails, high schools, workforce programs all over the country.
Tell me a little bit about the VR program. That's somewhat new with the last couple of years.
Yeah.
How does that work? The students that we met today aren't part of that necessarily, right? This is off.
We're just finishing our new iteration of our VR. And at that point, all of our students will be using virtual reality everywhere. But we developed a virtual reality or started to develop it coming out of COVID because you see this beautiful facility. Well, we only had 6 or 7 people in here over 9 months because there were no jobs to be had. Everybody had closed down. But the folks that we had here at the time are all incarcerated. And we said, we can't let them go home with nothing to do because they're going to end up going back to prison. Yeah. So we kept them coming here. But we started thinking about how do we expand what we do. And our board of directors has people on it like the vice president of NADA, the vice president of General Motors, the vice president of American Corrections Association. And those folks are going, we need you, Vehicles for Change, to get bigger and figure out how to train more people because we need technicians. And it's a great field for individuals who have a background. Yeah. So we were lucky to have some contacts with folks in the virtual reality world. I have a master's degree in information systems design, which from a long time ago. And I said, hey, this is something maybe we could put together. And so we developed our own virtual reality training. And our second iteration will be done in just a couple weeks. And I'm hoping we can do a demo for you guys.
Okay, great. And why former inmates? Why was that kind of the direction you took?
Well, I think for 2 reasons. One is that, some of the people who had gotten cars from us had a background and we understood how difficult it was for them to get employed. I had some interaction. I don't have any background in that area, but I have friends that work with formerly incarcerated. And so when we started looking at training, it was like, let's work with people who really need the help the most. And, this is a population that has the highest unemployment rates in the country, and I always say they get released from being incarcerated for 10, 15 years, but there's no such thing in this country as ever paying your dues, right? You always have this big sign on your forehead that says, I'm a former felon. Yeah. And we don't give people an opportunity. But I learned by talking to some of the folks in the industry that the automotive industry was willing to work with people with backgrounds.
And your recidivism rate is very low.
Yeah, our recidivism rate is 2.8%. And, people ask why. Well, a lot of it's our program. When somebody comes into our program, we sit down and we work with them literally from day one about getting ready to go to work and being that person that they need to be. But the automotive industry is also a very family-oriented industry. I mean, you talk to dealerships, most of them were started by families. Mm-hmm. They have that family feeling to them. When our folks go to work in a dealership or in a shop, they look out for each other. And so they're not looked at when they go to get a job there. They're not looked at as a criminal or somebody that might do something wrong. They're looked at as a technician and a human that is going to get better if we work with them. And I mean, our dealerships have been hiring our graduates for some of them 10, 12 years, and they keep coming back and hiring more. And I think that says everything about not just our program, but about the individual who we're working with. Nationally, statistics show that hiring somebody with a background is actually, you get a harder working employee who's more loyal, who's willing to do whatever it takes to be successful and appreciates the opportunity way more than even just hiring me. Yeah. Right. Out of COVID, right? Manufacturers stopped making cars. So if you went on a new car lot, there weren't any cars to even buy, really, for the most part, which really ended up making used car prices go up, and they've stayed up. And then the standard deduction kept getting increased. So now the person that might have had a car to donate who makes $100,000 a year, their standard deduction doesn't give them the ability to write it off. So it's been more and more difficult. We used to get 200 cars a month pre-COVID. This month we're going to do about 68, which really limits. The biggest part of that is we used to award 400 cars a year to families. Last year we did 75. Yeah, so we really can't help as many people as we wanted. It also reduces our revenue stream because a lot of the cars that we get, there's no way we can fix them. They've got 225,000 miles on them, their transmission, but we take anything. And I can turn that car into $150, $200, $300, and we used to generate a significant amount of our revenue from that. So we have created a partnership with a national organization that can pick cars up for us anywhere. So we do take cars literally coast to coast, and those cars help sustain our program financially.
Nice. Marty, appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This is Virginia. So as loud as possible, and I want you to sing as loud as possible. Good with that? Yeah.